Colleagues, welcome back. We're back from we've risen from the Committee of the Whole. We're back on second reading, and we are on Bill 24-36. But before we proceed, the clerks have made an announcement about a new Wi-Fi that they had to set up. So please let the Sergeant of Arms know if you don't have the new password for the new Wi-Fi system that we had to use pending repair of the other one. When we left off, we had just completed Senator Addis' remarks on Bill 24-36. Is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on Bill 24-36? Senator Taitagui, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if I could just get 1 minute to get this Wi-Fi going to ensure that we're up and running on the internet, I appreciate that. And then I would like to speak on the bill.
Are we ready, Senator? All right. Senator Taitagui, you have the floor on Bill 24-36.
Madam Speaker, for the opportunity and then allowing me just a few minutes to connect. Madam Speaker, I was listening to the commentary between our colleagues and the suggestions with regards to different options to help this bill through when some of those who don't particularly want this to move forward because of one reason or another. But some of the things that were made comments on was made from, actually was brought to us by another senator about documentation from the University of Guam. But Madam Speaker, if you look in our committee report, there was also a report that was created. It was the 2020 Guam Economic Report, which was done by the University of Guam as well, by Maria Claret Runen, PhD, along with several other individuals and students who created this and was finalized on December. And it's the green documentation that I have here, Madam Speaker, and it was completed on December 31st, 2020. And I would like to read just a few things into the record, Madam Chair. It mentions here that the summary, which was talking about COVID, et cetera, down the line, but it says here, with a few more assumptions, we estimate that Guam's economy in 2022 to have declined by negative 0.7% best scenario or negative 18.9% worst scenario compared to 2019. The bullet point also says, next bullet point is, in the absence of the $1.6 billion US federal government pandemic assistance to Guam in 2020, the scenario would be exceptionally worse, or our economy in 2020 would have declined at a range of 42% to 94% compared to what it was in 2019. This would be worse than the 25% decrease in the US economy during the Great Depression, years between 1929 and 1933. The next bullet point says the official unemployment rate of Guam was 17.3% for June 2020. For comparison, our own estimates for unemployment year to date, January to October 2020, were 19.8% using an approach and 26.6% using another approach. But here's where it gets interesting, Madam Speaker. Inflation estimates for the first and second quarters of 2022 were minus 0.6% and minus 0.8% respectively. The reason why I'm bringing that up, Madam Speaker, and if my colleagues had the opportunity to read this report, this is not something that was, it's not a 2019 report. This is a December 31st, 2020 report. When inflation is moving up, which, everybody knows what inflation is, usually minimum wage also follows suit because of inflation. But Madam Chair, in this report, it indicates that the inflation is lower. In fact, it's saying minus 0.6% and 0.8% respectively. And then it talks about the Depression years of 1929 and 1933. If you go back in history, you'll see, Madam Chair, that during that time, there was a standstill. Inflation was at a low. And that's what we were experiencing during this time and during this pandemic when they've kind of compared it to the Great Depression. Even at the US Congress, the discussion that everybody's bringing up on this $15 minimum wage, they're talking about not doing this until 2022. That's the latest. Because they know that the economy cannot, and jobs would not be able to sustain it in this year. Granted, the vaccine has done a lot to move things forward, but it's still not enough time. Madam Chair, inflation goes hand in hand when it comes to increasing the minimum wage. And we are not seeing that inflation right now. That's the difference. So I'd like my colleagues too to take an opportunity before you vote on this measure to look at this report and read it thoroughly. The Guam Economic Report done by the University of Guam. It will shed a lot of light on circumstances and maybe help your decision if you're on that borderline, whether to vote yes or no on this bill. So I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to bring this report up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 24-36, is there anyone who would like to be recognized? Senator Rangel, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do understand the challenges that the business community is facing at this time, but also at this time, I must stand in opposition to this bill and instead stand in support of the working class people of Guam. The retiring speaker made some mention about inflation. The testimony that we have from Dr. Roseanne Jones from the University of Guam, her testimony is that an increase in minimum wage for these workers would not be a cause of inflationary concern. Economists often argue policies about the economy, and it often depends on which economist you talk to. It's similar to the legal profession, I would say, where it depends which attorney you talk to, you get a different interpretation. Economics, there's still a lot of debate about the minimum wage in particular. And we'll be seeing this debate rise to the national level as the federal government begins to work on the possibility of a federal minimum wage increase to $15 per hour. Now, there's a lot of conflicting studies. I've read a few of them. One economist may tell you that the minimum wage, raising the minimum wage does cause inflation. Other economists, as Dr. Jones is saying here, our local professor of economics is saying here, that it doesn't. Some economists will argue that increasing the minimum wage will lead to a loss in jobs. And I heard some of that debate here on the session floor today. There's other reports that say that it doesn't. There's numerous studies that have been conducted that say that actually when they compared across states, increases to the minimum wage did not reflect unemployment. So the bottom line for me here is that you can ask different economists different things, and they'll tell you different things depending on which economist you talk to and which study was done and how the study was done. There's so many different ways to look at something. But I guess I'm looking at it from the point of view of the working class person. And I want to read into the record a message that I received from someone. I did not get permission to use his name yet, so I'll just go ahead and read. This person messaged me and said, "Hafa-Day Senator, please do not support Bill 24-36. As a minimum wage earner, this bill would hurt. Some businesses proclaim the increase will hurt their ability to recover from massive losses caused by the pandemic. There is no legislation for businesses to roll back their own price increases. As the news reported this week, gas prices recently increased by 10 cents. Grocery prices have increased as well. The Utilities Commission has talked of increasing rates. With all of these increases, the very small 50-cent increase of a minimum wage seems trivial. I humbly ask you to consider your support of Bill 24-36. Be a champion for us people, not for businesses." That's where I stand on this bill. I stand with the people, with the working class people who suffer. We're suffering to make ends meet. We can argue all day about what the economists say, but there are some facts that can't be argued. One fact that all the economists will agree to, most economists would agree to it, is that the cost of wages has not kept up with inflation. And there's data that backs that up. There's data that shows the buying power of $1 today is less than it was years ago. That's proof that, and that when factored in with the wages, it's proof that the wages haven't kept up with the degree of inflation. The minimum wage in particular. There's arguments about the free market. Let's let the free market dictate and determine how wages should be set, which is fine in theory, but is not seen in reality. You can take a look at history. History has shown us that it's taken policymakers to increase wages, to increase minimum wage, to keep up with inflation. If you leave it to the free markets will not keep wages in line with inflation. The proof is there in history. When you leave it to the free market would always look for cheaper labor, the cheapest labor possible, in order to maximize profits. In fact, in history, this has shown that the free market has gone so cheap as to turn to free labor, also known as slave labor. It took policymakers to eliminate this type of labor. Otherwise, the free market thought slavery was okay. To me, this is enough proof that if left alone to the free market, wages will not keep in line with the inflation of the market. So with that, I think it is our duty to protect the working class people and keep wages as close as we can in line with inflation. Businesses have a lot of say in the political sphere, of course, because the business community has a lot of money. And with that money, they're able to garner a lot of influence and get a lot of say in the political sphere. The working class people often don't have that same amount of influence. So today, I would like to urge my colleagues to support the working class who are suffering to make ends meet. Today, I want to say that the working class often doesn't have anyone fighting for them. Who's going to look out for the little guy? I will look out for the little guy. And I urge my colleagues to look out for the little guy as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 24-36, is there anyone who would like to be recognized on Bill number 24-36? Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So it's been very difficult to try to decide on this bill. I think there's many good arguments on both sides. And I think, looking at this, we have to look at the landscape of how we're going to rebuild our economy. I think, what's at stake at this decision is, how do we go forward to restore relationships? And yes, a year ago, when we passed this bill, we would never have fathomed that we would be in this position where we got the rug pulled from under us, health-wise and economically as well. And it's been said that there are 3,000 workers that are currently receiving minimum wage, and compared to the 26,000 or tens of thousands that are unemployed right now. And I guess in making this decision, it's important to think about, how to move forward to ensure that livelihoods are not affected. And to me, that is critical, is how are we going to ensure that people's livelihoods are retained in this time as we move forward to build upon rebuilding our economy. And to me, what's important here is the dialogue, and to come together in a coordinated fashion in how we're going to rebuild our economy. This is one bill that I feel is a piecemeal part of the whole process. And I see many bills come forward, before the legislature, cutting this, cutting that. And yet, with all of that, I feel there needs to be improvement in how we're going to move forward to help our community as a whole. And I think this is where, where there's challenges, there's opportunities. And I think that I want to support the livelihoods of people. But in doing so, we have to also push for a higher, more expectations of us. And one of the things that's affecting our community is the cost of living. We've seen goods go up, services, the cost of services and goods go up. And I think that we have to work harder to address those root issues. The Jones Act, we need to look at that. How can we reduce the cost of goods? How can we create affordable housing? How can we provide health care for our community? And these are the things that we need to work together as we rebuild our economy to ensure that our people are taken care of. And so as I deliberate on this bill, I would like to, also encourage that dialogue to continue, because COVID really has almost leveled the playing field, where we can now view things from a different perspective. We need to work together. We no longer can work in silos. If we're going to adapt and create resilience in our community, it's about this dialogue. And how are we going, and with the whole goal in mind of improving the quality of life for everybody. And I think there's definitely room for that, for concessions on all sides. And yes, the wages have not kept up with the cost of living on Guam. And I feel that we need to actually come together on, how can we ensure that our people can afford the life? If they work a full-time job, they should be able to afford living here on Guam. So that's what I would like to pose at this time. Situs Masi.
Situs Masi, Senator. On bill number 24-36, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized? If not, then sponsor, Senator Moylan, you may close on bill number 24-36.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues for the discussion on the bill. All the information is well taken, and it was good that we hear from many sides about the bill. And I would just like to close with just a couple more things that we have in the committee report as well, in which many of us have been referring to throughout our discussion. Just to highlight, here's one letter that was addressed by corporation owner, Applebee's, IHOP, Peology, Olive Garden, Longhorn, which, by the way, hasn't opened to the public since the pandemic and made that huge investment and probably hired people and probably fired people because they couldn't open their doors. But we're hoping so in the near future that they are able to. So, Mr. Richard Hart, president of Applebee's Apple Pacific Restaurant Group, he said at some point there has to be recognition of what is fair and just, and most importantly, how much more pressure can be put on small businesses in Guam without any relief measures to them. There will not be any jobs for people to go back to at the rate, and frankly, an increase of minimum wage at this time would be one of the most irresponsible moves made since the pandemic started here in Guam. It would lead to immediate inflation, job losses, and even more struggles for the businesses that are fighting to employ people. At this time last year, I employed nearly 400. Today, I employ 83. And at least 50% of the lost jobs are not going to come back. How is that going to be answered? By raising the minimum wage for the smallest class of employees on Guam and causing more job losses? That's a question. There was also a testimony and a presentation at the public hearing by an employee, Mr. Dominic Hernandez. And he said he was recently hired, and this could cause issues for him and others who have been lucky enough to get hired during this pandemic, so that we do not depend on unemployment insurance or PUA. A company would be more likely to reduce hours or let go of recently hired individuals versus those who have been with the company for longer periods of time. I do not blame any business owner who would do this to a new hires, because given the increase in minimum wage, plus dealing with the hardships of the pandemic, it is within reason and in all honesty fair to do. Minimum wage increase should be done when the economy has recovered and is growing strong. As an individual who is currently being paid minimum wage, I do not support delaying the minimum wage increase to help the majority who are facing hardships or struggles caused by the pandemic versus just helping those that may or may not benefit off of the increase in minimum wage. So, Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to discuss this bill on session floor, and I also want to thank my co-sponsors, Senator Mary Torres, Senator Chris Duenas, and Senator Frank Blas. Madam Speaker, I also would like at this time to move and place Bill number 2436 as amended by the Committee on Environmental Revenue and Taxation, Labor and Procurement, and Statistics, Research, and Planning to the third reading file. Madam Speaker.
And as further amended on the floor, or there were no amendments? Okay, so yes. On the motion to place the bill in third reading, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, the motion carries. Senator Jose Pito Terlahi, we're now on bill number 26-36. You are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. First off, I want to move 2636 to the third reading file, and I would like to discuss this particular bill. Bill 2636, as amended by the committee, is a small part of my plan to have been working on over for the past term to reduce overtime, for one, build a quality stable of qualified recruits ready to be hired in order to meet the mandates of our public safety agencies must meet, and to improve the morale of public safety officers. To say our frontline heroes are overworked and exhausted is an understatement. They are almost required to spend additional time at work away from their friends and families. They see tragedy and lawlessness the rest of us can only imagine. Reserve programs allow retirees and other qualified individuals to help enforce our laws. A larger law enforcement presence in our streets and in our public parks will go a long way towards thwarting crimes, therefore increasing safety for all of us. Bill number 2636 create a reserve program for our park rangers who recently have over 75 parks to monitor. We've only 2 full-time rangers, and I say full-time, and this particular bill that does not mention anything about increasing the numbers of park rangers at the present time. That's a larger undertaking, and they need our help. This bill would allow us to have reservists work 42 hours a month for the cost of only $500 a month. And I don't know if my original bill mentioned $500, but if anything, I would like to amend that from $500 to $200, from $250 to $500. A fraction of what we would need to pay for a full-time ranger. This would help us to curb illegal activities in the park and to make our park facilities safer for our communities. And I pray that my colleagues will support this measure and create a park ranger reserve program so that we can provide safety parks for our residents. And Madam Speaker, and one of the reasons why I was forceful to draft a bill, this bill, 2636, at least for 3 reasons. One is to really actually maintain the parks in as far as people trashing the parks, people damaging the restroom and things like that. It's only to create an environment for our people to make sure that when they went to the park to use the restroom, and we have visitors going in there, you know, it's gonna be a positive outlook. And I ask that my colleagues support Bill 2636. I had mentioned that there's only 2 park rangers right now, and they're handling like 75 or 77 parks around the island. And these park rangers And these park reserve officers can also assist in the enforcement, not only in traffic, because they are peace officers, and they can enforce the law in general. Whatever violation they see out there, violation of road violations or violation of traffic, violation of criminal activities, they can enforce that. And once we have those people in line, they can assist in our public safety officers also. And I thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to put out 2636 to be moved to the third reading file. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Terlahi. And to clarify, this is Bill number 26-36 COR as amended by the Committee on Air Transportation, Parks, Tourism, Higher Education, and the Advancement of Women, Youth, and Senior Citizens. All right, so on the bill as amended by the committee, is there anyone who'd like, Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Sitos Masi, Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of 26-36 COR and maybe share some of the analysis on the effort of this move, and note for the record on what the fiscal note by BBMR has presented to this body. Again, Madam Speaker, if I may, this bill intends to create the volunteer program within the Department of Parks and Recreation and give its entitled name Civilian Voluntary Territorial Park Patrol Officer Reserve. And of course, this will be within the area of Department of Parks and Recreation. The named program will be entitled that Civilian Voluntary Territorial Park Patrol. Its effective date, Madam Speaker, will be immediate upon the approval by this body and, of course, the signature of the governor. I will note that in this bill, it does not specify, but it is in reference to Chapter 77 of Guam Code Annotated. The director is defined as Director of Parks and Recs, and the commission is defined as Parks and Recreation Commission. So if there's anything needed by legal counsel to just make the proper technical inclusions, maybe I'll check with them later, and if there's anything that needs to be included, just to make sure that it's addressed in the proper section, Madam Speaker, I'll ask for that later. But I do note that the good author of this legislation is right. There's only 2 park rangers. He said there was 70 plus parks, I think, listed based on what Department of Parks and Recs is working on right now is 56 plus. I know that the mayors have had some parks given to their jurisdictions, but still, Madam Speaker, the need for Territorial Park Patrol Reserve officers is critical and necessary to help preserve and protect the parks that we have around our island. And I want to say that the impact of this, based on what was asked, the good author also noted that he was going to include the inclusion of a stipend. And if I look at the amendment, it already gives that instead of it being $250 as normally done in the past for reserves, that stipend would be inclusive of the $500. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say that I rise in support of this bill. I want to thank the good author for making me become his second co-sponsor to this. And I'm hoping that my colleagues will support the efforts, as there's a need. And we know that there are a lot of retired folks out there and those who really want to give back to the community in some way or another. And this program is a worthwhile reserve program to initiate. And I'm in support of that, and I just wanted to ensure for the record that BBMR did send its fiscal note down, and based on their numbers, it was looking at that financial impact would be about, if you were look to have the stipend at 250, it was 30,000, but if the bill says 500, then it's double that. So just wanted to make sure that that's recorded in the body of this bill, Madam Speaker. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I'll catch up with legal just to make sure that the provisions based on the creation of this legislation, that it is put into the proper citation. Sinamasi.
Sinamasi. On Bill number 26-36, is there anyone who would like to be recognized? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I actually do rise in support of this bill, and I certainly commend the author, Senator Terlahi, for introducing it. I did attend the public hearing with this bill, and certainly over the years we've seen the issue and the challenges that have faced our parks around the island, and certainly our park rangers. I mean, there was a period of time when they had a lot more resources and personnel to actually do their job. And right now we're down to 2 park rangers to perform the job of 70-plus parks. What came to light in the course of that public hearing from the testimony of the 2 park rangers that participated, one that had been there, I believe, since 2006, and asking him why he continued to stay on a job where he had limited resources to work with, and certainly only had 1 other park ranger for the entire island that he had to cover. And I think his comments were quite informative. Because he felt that he was part of the community. There's a lot of people that he has to deal with in the parks, not just dealing with the enforcement aspect, but even those of our community that are homeless, that have nowhere else to go besides the park. And it's reminded me once again, Madam Chair, of something that I've seen in this government after 30-plus years, is where our government serves our public directly and interfaces with our public directly, we provide the least amount of resources and the least accessibility to those resources for our people. And I think this is actually something, and even though we are going through challenging financial times in our budget, of course we're going to a decrease as a result of our economic slowdown as a result of this pandemic, I think we need to make a greater effort to ensure that where our government interfaces with our public and provides support to our public, it could be, standing in line at Rev and Tax to get your registration, your driver's license, pay your taxes, go down and get a building permit at DPW. I mean, just really think about it. Where are the areas in our government where the people of Guam actually have to come face to face with their government employees and government officials? And I think in those key areas, we should provide more personnel and more services, especially just to deal with the safety of our island. I mean, many of us growing up on Guam were fortunate perhaps to have our single-family homes, probably a compound where we have our immediate family members around us. Many of us were also fortunate enough to have a ranch to go to because we had inherited family property. They gave us acres. I certainly got to experience that as a young child. Acres and acres of land that was there and was my playground. A lot of young people now don't have that opportunity. They might be living in a condominium. They might be living in an apartment building, and they don't have the opportunity, including just our residents, our elderly, to be able to get out and enjoy the outdoors. They should feel safe. They should feel safe to be able to get out of their homes and go out and enjoy our parks and walk and exercise and barbecue and do the things that we would like to do to enjoy the beauty of our island that we have. And I think we should be making far more effort as a government to make our people feel safe in these areas. Because for many, that is the only open green space that they may have, particularly for young children to get out and exercise. So I do support this bill, but I'm mindful as we move forward in the upcoming budget to actually look at these key areas, because while we may have to decrease in others, I don't have a problem addressing that if we can ensure more resources go to these areas where we're upfront and where our government employees actually work to service directly with our community. I think we have a greater responsibility to do that. We have thousands of employees, but we don't have all of them more upfront and engaging with our community, and particularly in this area where they perform a law enforcement service. I mean, they are peace officers. They go through the same level of training, but they don't have the same level of opportunity. They don't have the same level of compensation to advance in their careers. And I would like to think that everyone wants to do this out of the goodness of their heart, but everyone else has responsibilities. They have families to take care of. They probably have mortgages and car payments. And definitely in this area, I commend Senator Pito for introducing this and looking at an alternative for increasing the number of civilian volunteer members to be Park Patrol officers. But I don't even know, and even when we had the public hearing, there was no direct answer, for example, for the Guam Police Department or the police reserves. I don't know right now, nor did it provide the information, how many active police reserves do we have serving in the Guam Police Department? I don't know what other areas we have this type of arrangement set up. I mean, it's great if we're able to get, retired Park Patrol officers, police officers that may want to come back and volunteer their services, but I think in these critical areas of community support and law enforcement, we should be putting more resources. And definitely in this area where our parks should be not just taken care of, but they should be safe zones for our community to be actively involved in and engaged with. And with that, Madam Speaker, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to comment on Bill 26-36.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill 26, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized? Bill 26. If not, then, Senator Shelton, you're recognized.
Sedis Masi, Madam Speaker, and I rise in support of this bill and thank the sponsor for the opportunity to provide our Park Patrol officers with more manpower to keep our parks safe and clean. At the bill's public hearing, we heard from DPR Director Alcantara and officers Pedro Lizama and Joaquin Mesa about their experiences with patrolling our parks. They told us how, in addition to keeping our over 60 parks safe and clean, they have also become social workers with the growing number of homeless individuals they encounter. We also heard from them that they have been recruiting individuals interested in the program we're discussing today. According to the 2 Park Patrol officers, 10 individuals have expressed their interest, and I want to thank DPR and especially its Park Patrol Division for their continued service and dedication to keeping our community safe. As chair on parks, I ensured that the committee took into consideration that the reservists under this program be trained and certified like any other peace officer, and that they be paid the same amount as reservists in other programs at $500. I think all of us feel a sense of personal responsibility to ensure that our parks are safe and clean for our community to enjoy. Indeed, we need to do more to help our park system, and keeping in mind that we are to reopen and recover the tourism economy soon, and most especially for the use and enjoyment of our local community. Our parks and all those who keep it safe are at the heart and forefront of that effort. And this legislation will certainly help DPR achieve that goal. Sedis Masi, Madam Speaker.
Sedis Masi. On the bill, Senator Dueñas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also commend the author, Senator Pito, and rise in support of Bill 2636. I also did attend the public hearing, Madam Speaker, and encourage the director, Alcantara, to look at a program that I think has been a hallmark of volunteerism on Guam, and that's the AmeriCorps program. As the director of Department of Youth Affairs many years ago, AmeriCorps volunteers both at Department of Youth Affairs and also at Department of Agriculture, were very instrumental in assisting with the day-to-day operations of DYA and agriculture. And many of them, Madam Speaker, actually joined as an AmeriCorps volunteer to volunteer at those locations because they had an interest in law enforcement. They had an interest in providing for the safety, security, and cleanliness of our island, helping our youth, and the like. And I agree with Senator Brown. I mean, the thing is that with the difficulties we have now with finances in the government and the like, this is a great way to augment our workforce and help those it's not a Lone Ranger, it's two Lone Rangers. the two officers that are currently, really covering the entire island. I think it's 36 parks that they mentioned in the hearing. And so, Madam Speaker, as the good senator from Ordo Chalampago said that, perhaps the first wave of individuals that'd be interested in doing something like this for a stipend would be retirees, those who are retired in law enforcement, have a background and understand and would meet the requirements of having to have the training of law enforcement, but it would also be young people, perhaps, like I said, from the AmeriCorps or other programs, Balea graduates, those that might be attending GCC, UOG, working towards a law enforcement degree. And it really is a great way to create, a farm program, if you will, for those individuals who would really like to someday be part of a full-time force of law enforcement. And who knows, as the budget may start to improve in the coming years, we'll continue to provide additional resources. And we have these individuals who have been trained and are experienced in augmenting the current workforce of Parks and Rec. And I've always, I think even till today, Madam Speaker, many youth service workers at Department of Youth Affairs started out as AmeriCorps volunteers, getting through their school requirements, getting a stipend there as well. And because of that training, became great officers and great servants of the people of Guam. So, to Senator Pito, congratulations on this bill. I definitely fully support it. And it's just a great way to be creative in this time when, we have a lot of difficulty with government finances. And so thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak in full support of Bill 2636. Suzus Masi.
Suzus Masi. Senator, on Bill 26-36, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized? Senator Taitigui, you are recognized.
Suzus Masi, Madam Chair. I too attended the public hearing on this measure, and I found that it was very touching when two of the officers there, the only two actually in that department that oversee these parks, Mr. Pedro Lizama and Mr. Joaquin Mesa. I'd really like to give them a kudos and a shout out to them, because not only are they there to protect the parks, but they even said during the testimony that they sometimes become social workers for individuals, for the homeless that are there. And I thought that was very, very touching, because they go beyond what their responsibilities are to our community and to help those individuals who are out there. I stand in full support of this measure, Madam Speaker. However, I do have a question to the author, if he should so shall yield, please.
Please state your question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So based on the fiscal report here, it said, I do understand the bill says it allows the department agency to, within their own budget, to seek this funding that is needed. And according to OFB, according to BBMR, it's stating that it's an annual amount of about $30,000. And we know that we are in dire strait here in the government, the revenues coming in, as we see every month, the CRER report. So my question is, have they identified that money in Parks and Rec to be able to fulfill this potential legislation?
All right. Senator Terlahi, will you yield to that question?
Madam Speaker, what is the question?
Yes, I think the question was whether the department had found the money to pay for the program. Senator Taitigui, is that correct?
Yes, Madam Speaker,
Yes,
thank you.
that's
Madam
it.
Speaker, actually, my write-up on this particular bill was not really centered on if there's money or not. It's only centered on the enforcement and the necessary things that we need to do to go forward with making sure that the parks are protected, that the parks officers are augmented, and that is all. I am not sure about the funding, but I'm pretty sure that we can make that funding available. If we have to start out with $250 a month, then we will. But, Madam Speaker, I'll get back to you, and I'll conclude this by providing you with additional information regarding funding on this particular bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Taitagui, you still have the floor.
Madam Speaker, and thank you to the author for answering my question and being honest with that, because we do know that our government is in dire strait of the financial situation that we're in, but something as important as this legislation that's been introduced really needs more than just like crossing our fingers here to ensure that there's money there. I think that maybe if this bill should pass, then we should move forward with actually finding some money and appropriating it to the agency to ensure that this measure does move forward. You know, it's important that whatever legislation we put forth, that it's something that will come to fruition and not just like it sounds good bill. It's a good sounding bill and that's it. We all know the need for it. So with that being said, Madam Speaker, you know, maybe the good author as well as myself can get together and find some money to give to the Department of Parks and Recs to fulfill this obligation if this should become law. Thank you.
Thank you. On Bill 26, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized? Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, I support the bill in regards to building capacity for our parks, and I do appreciate the hard work that the two officers are doing at this moment for all the 70 parks. I just have a question for the author of the bill, if he so yields.
Please state your questions, Senator.
So there's a part in the bill that mentions rules and regulations, and it states the director is authorized and empowered to recommend to the governor.
Sorry, Senator, could you just be a little louder? Thank
Sure.
you.
So on page 5 of the bill, under rules and regulations, it states that the director can recommend to the governor, with the concurrence of the commission, for the issuance as executive orders, the making, amendment, and rescission of such orders, rules, and regulations. And I just want to know the rationale behind that.
Senator Tetlahi, would you yield to that question?
Madam Speaker, I got to understand the question. I can hardly hear the speaker, so
Okay. We'll repeat the
can you
question,
repeat
sir.
the question for me,
Yes,
please?
will do. Senator Perez, yeah.
Sure.
please.
On page 5 of the bill, under rules and regulations,
I beg your pardon, Senator.
so on the last page of
On
the
my
bill.
version, it's on page 4 is the last
Okay.
page of the bill.
Okay, so on the last page, under rules
Okay.
and regulations,
right.
section H.
All right, just one second. So Senator Tetlahi, it's about page 4, the rules and regulations section. She's about to ask a question.
Madam Speaker, what is he talking about the rules and regulation? What regulation and rules? This particular bill, 2636, had nothing to do with the rules. It has a lot to do with enforcement, invigorating the enforcement of our park rangers. That's all that it is. So whatever rules and regulations, I don't know.
All right, we're going to
Thank
take
you,
a
Madam
1 minute.
Speaker.
We're going to take a 1 minute recess. back on the record. Senator Perez, you have the floor.
This is Masi, Madam Speaker. Yes, thank you for the recess, and I got some clarity as far as the language. So it does appear in another part of statute in regards to reservists for the police department. So yeah, thank you. My questions were answered. No amendments at this time. This is Masi.
You're welcome. Senator Terlahi, did you have a point of information?
Madam Speaker, if my colleague wishes to bring this up and go through the AAA process, it's up to her, but I just want to say that if we go that route, it's going to take time. It's going to take time to do the triple process, and the reason why I did this, because it's easier if we do it this way and we let the commission do it, working out with the Director of Parks and Rec. And then the governor is in support of this manner of approach. And that's all that I'm asking. And if she want to go through a AAA process, by all means. But it's going to take longer for us to implement this program.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Perez.
A point of information.
Yes.
I was asking for clarity. I wasn't promoting a AAA process. So I just wanted to know the source of this language. This is Masi.
Thank you. On the bill 26-36, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized on the bill? Senator, Vice Speaker?
Vice Speaker, thank you.
I think you were
You allowed
recognized.
me to speak earlier, and I just wanted to say that just to be safe, that blanket motion to allow legal to make any technical changes if necessary. I brought up the director and the commission and the definitions there too. So just a blanket motion to allow legal to make technical corrections if necessary.
Is there anyone who hasn't spoken on the bill who would like to make that motion? Senator San Augustine?
Madam Speaker, I would like to speak on the bill.
Oh, okay, sure.
I would just,
We'll take that up, Vice Speaker, if we can get a response. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
Senators-
I will yield to that.
Thank you. All right.
Madam Speaker, if he will make that amendment, just to make sure. Okay?
Yes, Senator San Augustine, you have the floor, and, but we were just talking about a pending, or if we need a motion for legal to make any technical corrections necessary in the bill relative to the commission, because the Parks and Recs has a commission.
all right, thank you. Madam Speaker and my colleagues, I just finished talking to the Director of Parks and Rec. And in reference to, I think, the question earlier that was discussed about the rules and regulation, I must have missed any other conversation you guys had earlier while I was on the phone. They don't have rules and regulations governing it right now. What they were looking at doing was mirroring exactly what they have at the other reserve group, such as the police reserve. And if you follow page 4, lines 6 to lines 13, the very bottom is very important. It talks about the AAA. It talks about them developing the rules and then going to the AAA to make it valid, make it sound, and meet the requirements, so that the Civilian Volunteer Territorial Park Patrol Officer Reserve would be whole and would be consistent with the other reserve forces. And I think that was the intent of the author of the bill, and as I spoke to the director. And I do stand in support of the bill. Number one, this motion was attempted the last term by then Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano. And the main issue I brought with her was, where's the rules and regulation? And then now we have this in place, this bill. I stand in support of this bill because of my background in the police department in '78. There were several police officers that resigned from the Guam Police Department. Back then it was called the Department of Public Safety, to join Parks and Rec. And they became park rangers. And at the same token, for some of you that are not aware, park rangers also augment the Guam Police Department. In time of need, in any accidents, or any criminal action, they're part of that group. And I would expect the patrol reserve will be the same thing like you have with the police reserve. So, Madam Speaker, if there's an amendment that needs to be made, I'll introduce it. I just need to know exactly what it is, and I can introduce it. Madam Vice, do you have that amendment?
It was just a blanket, and we were going to save a tree and just give the legal the necessary authority to make any necessary corrections if
All right.
necessary.
Then so be it, yes. I'd like to make a motion that the legal bureau will make the appropriate amendments that's necessary for this bill to be whole.
All right, on that amendment, Senator Blas, on that amendment?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the amendment, well, I really don't have an issue with that. I'm a little concerned that when we say blanket, I think that for the sake of making sure that it stays within the intent and within the context of the legislation, that the body has an opportunity before it even gets moved into the third reading file, an opportunity to go back and look at what those amendments were, so that we're assured that the amendments don't drastically change what the intent of the legislation is. I trust in the work of her, but I think I don't want to put the onus on too much on the legal counsel to try to fathom and to think what may have been the intent of the author for this legislation, to give us an opportunity to review this before it goes down to the third. Again, I have no problem with the amendment. It's just with a caveat that we don't expect legal counsel to be able to go through this document at this point in time and be ready in the next few minutes to show where these amendments are at. I just don't think that we should move this bill into third reading without even recognizing and reviewing what these amendments are and the effect that it has on the bill.
Thank you, Senator. On the motion to allow legal counsel to make technical amendments to the bill, I believe actually that our standing rules already allow that, but on the motion, is there any objection? Or is there anyone else who would like to speak? Are there any objections? Is that an objection?
I know, Madam Speaker, I apologize. It's not so much an objection as basically, if I want to amend the amendment to read that she can do this, provided that before this bill moves to third reading, we have an opportunity to review where those amendments are at.
Normally, the technical amendments are made on engrossment, and that we will all get an opportunity to review the bill prior to voting.
I understand, Madam Speaker, but I think in this case, as significant as it is, after engrossment and in the third, it gives us no opportunity to be able to look at the bill. And I want to support the bill, and I am supporting the bill, but I'm just concerned that if these amendments make the changes, if there are changes in this bill that make me feel uncomfortable, I may not support it, but I won't have an opportunity to help to amend it so that it can be something I can support.
All right. Perhaps Senator Augustine, could you please clarify the motion? Is it for technical amendments to the bill, or are there for substantive amendments?
I believe it's for technical amendments. But you know, Madam Speaker, I understand where my primo, Senator Frank is coming from. It's only 325. Maybe we can just set the bill aside, let them do the technical, legal amendments, and then we bring it back up, and then we'll be done with this. Because I think there's sufficient number of support of the bill. It's just to make sure that the bill is still whole as intended. It's to support the patrol reserve. And maybe we can find out from legal what she's looking at.
Madam Speaker, on a point of information, please. Madam Speaker?
Oh, and she's talking to legal.
All right.
On a point of information, Madam Speaker,
Point of
please.
information. Please state your point of
Yes,
information.
thank you, Madam Speaker. When I was speaking on the main motion of the question, Madam Speaker, I had noted that the word director and commission, and usually when intents are provided and it usually specifies the meaning. And in this form of Chapter 77, it just talks about director and it doesn't delineate its definition. Is it the director of Parks and Recs? Is it the director of what agency? And I just wanted to say if there was any necessary technical changes that were needed to ensure that we're talking about the right thing, that it'd be afforded that way. It was a simple technical correction needed just in case. So, Madam Speaker, with all due respect, that was just based on the intent. It talked about the commission and it talked about the director, and it didn't specifically say the name. And instead of making the amendment, I just wanted to allow legal if it was necessary. But if it's bringing up that many commotion, then I'm going to ask the good senator to withdraw the amendment. Whew. Thank you.
All right, Madam Speaker, I will withdraw the amendment then, and we can move on.
Thank you. Motion is withdrawn. Is there any objection to the withdrawing of the motion?
No objection.
It's, is there what? You're objecting to withdrawing the motion? All right. Well, it's a motion. I'm sorry. I shouldn't even have called for a vote. It's a motion. He's withdrawing his motion. It's not an amendment to the bill. It was just a motion. So he's withdrawn the motion. It's moot. So on the bill, Bill 26-36, is there anyone else who would like to speak on the bill? On the bill? If not, then we will allow the sponsor to close on the bill. Senator Tetlayi, you may close on the bill.
Madam Speaker, like I mentioned initially, I move 2636 to the third reading file. And that's all that I have to say. And in as far as amendment, I can't answer that. I don't think we need any more amendments on this one.
All right. On the motion to move Bill 26-36 to the third reading file, is there any objection?
No objection.
Hearing no objections, you object? Okay, so all in favor of moving the bill to the third reading, please raise your hand. Motion carries. We're now on Bill number 31-36 on our second reading file, and Senator Moylan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill number 3136 as amended, which is an act to add subsection 4101.2 to Chapter 4 of Title 4, Guam Code Annotated. It's relative to modernizing a process which would allow for streamlining in the recruitment and hiring of law enforcement officers, to be known as the Swift Appointment Modernization Act of 2021. Into the third reading file, Madam Speaker. I'm sorry. Into third reading filed, and I wish to discuss it, Madam Speaker.
All right, and the motion is on Bill 31-36 COR as amended by the Committee on Public Accountability, Human Resources, the Guam Buildup, Hagåtña Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, and Technology. On that amendment, please proceed, Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sorry, on that motion, please proceed, Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Swift Appointment and Modernization Act of 2021 is also known as Bill 3136, is merely an opportunity to streamline the hiring process of law enforcement officers. During our public hearing on this measure, we heard positive support from the heads of Customs and Quarantine Agency, Guam Police Department, Department of Administration, and others on this bill as well. We also heard recommendations to improve Bill 3136, which is what we see in the amendments, amended version, or substitute amended version, rather, sorry, in front of us here today. Now, for years, we have heard of the challenges in allowing the applicant of law enforcement positions channeled from the applicant stage to the interview stage, and of course, if it happens, then to the hiring phase. Bill 3136 makes some modifications towards this process. It provides agencies access to a certification list of more applicants than the funded position. And why do we do this? Because to continue the flow of the review and processing of potential applicants. Now, considering the timelines in place, Madam Speaker, it's very easy to lose applicants in this process, as we know. Thus, this amendment would continue to keep the inventory flowing, and that's critical for the directors of the departments. And Bill 3136 also amends the tail end of the process by allowing law enforcement agencies to continue to conduct interviews even if vacant positions have been filled. Why should we do this? Well, because these agencies will share their concerns that while they fill a seat, there is still a timeline process where a now hired employee may reconsider what is on the table, and hence the position becomes vacant. This needs to change. And will once again, we allow the flow of the inventory of applicants to be ongoing. Bill 3136 is a simple measure whose objective is to assist in streamlining the process in hiring law enforcement officers. And sure, this is just one of the many needed changes, but we can't talk about retention or providing needed resources if we can't even create a smooth hiring process. So I thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity, and I urge my colleagues for their support of Bill 3136. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 31-36, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized? Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, I stand in support of the bill, but what I seem to be noticing missing, Swift Appointment Modernization Act for law enforcement. I'm a former police officer. I understand that. I'm a former criminal tax investigator. I understand that. But what happened to the teachers? What happened to the nurses? What happened to the public health folks? What happened to revenue and tax employees that are sensitive and are needed? I'm just wondering that maybe the author can seriously consider that maybe this thing should catch all the sensitive and highly critical position in Gov Guam and consider that. But I'm in support of the bill. The bill's intent is good for law enforcement because there has always been a backlog. But there's also a backlog in nurses, backlog in teachers. I think those professions, they always wait for a job fair. How about you need job fair? I'm just concerned. There are other professions that should have a swift Appointment Modernization Act. And I just hate to always have to wait for another bill to add on to the same thing when the intent was the same. Something to consider, the author would consider it, and maybe later on I can add the amendment to this to include everybody that needs to be included. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On Bill number 31-36, Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Jesus Masi, Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of Bill 3136. As the Oversight Chair on Human Resources, I worked closely with the sponsor of this legislation to get this through. I also asked that I be included in the co-sponsorship, so I'm hoping that he would afford me that opportunity. Madam Speaker, this bill was introduced to allow the Department of Administration to create policy to the rules to allow for a more sensible and speedier process of recruiting and hiring law enforcement and public safety agencies, and that it would include increasing and listing of applicants made available to such agencies and allowing agencies a continuous of interviews to anticipate uncertainties, such candidates turning down a job offer for whatever reason. The public hearing had the law enforcement agency heads there. All of them were in full support, and this was a measure, if I wasn't mistaken, happened maybe a decade or two ago, where there was a temporary provision on that. Some of the questions that were asked was the process of appeal. Would it look from going down from 10 days down to 7, and then the sunset provision, if I'm not mistaken. So with the amendment in, that should address the concerns that were brought up. So in those efforts, I stand and rise in support of this bill, and thank the good sponsor of this legislation for putting for introducing this bill, and hope he can consider the co-sponsorship. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. Senator Torres, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had a question about the appeals process, and if the author will yield, I'm just trying to understand how was it rectified with the testimony given about the concern to not reduce the appeals, the days for appeals because of the time that it takes to notify the person and then for the person to then reply. So was that issue satisfied? I'm not so sure how it was. And if the author could explain, I'd appreciate it.
Senator Moylan, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for that question. Yes, that was discussed in the public hearing. The appeals adjustment was removed from the amended version based on the comments made at the time of the public hearing. So that's no longer part of that bill. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So in essence, it stays intact the way it was? Is that correct?
Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To my colleague, yes.
Okay.
Status quo. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
On the bill, Senator Rigel, you are recognized. Oh. Okay. On the bill, is there anyone else who would like to be recognized? Bill 31-36. All right, if not, then Senator Moylan, you may close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, colleagues, for the discussion on 3136. I also appreciate the opportunity to add to the co-sponsor, Vice Speaker Senator Tina Munoz-Barnes as well. And if there's any others that wish to be added to the co-sponsor, please acknowledge, and we can do so at this time.
On the motion to place Vice Speaker Munoz-Barnes as a co-sponsor to the bill, is there any objection? Hearing no objection, motion carries. Senator Moylan, you are still recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I moved then to place Bill number 3136 as amended by the committee into third reading voting file. Madam Speaker.
On the motion to place the bill 31-36 as amended by the committee and amended on the floor to the third reading, is there any objection? Hearing no objection. Objection? All right, there's an objection to place the bill on third reading. Please, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. All right, colleagues, we have exhausted our second reading file. There are many bills that have been uploaded by Committee on Rules, so I'm going to recess until Monday at 10 a.m., please. We're recessed till Monday at 10 a.m.